Sometimes consistent quarterback play over decades turns someone into a legend, but sometimes a few good seasons puts a quarterback on a pedestal they don't really belong on. Today on Football Lore, we are going to dive into what are, in my opinion, the top 5 most overrated quarterbacks in history. I understand this list is going to make some people mad, but that's just the way the cookie crumbles sometimes. Hopefully you guys enjoy our list and reasoning. Brett Favre is often hailed as one of the greatest quarterbacks in NFL history, and in many ways, his regular season accomplishments back up that claim. A 3-time MVP and a record setter in nearly every significant passing category during his career. Favre's consistency and toughness, epitomized by his Iron Man streak of 297 consecutive starts, cemented his status as a legend. He gave fans countless jaw-dropping moments with his fearless gunslinger mentality, always willing to take the big shot downfield. But when you peel back the layers, particularly in the postseason, Favre's legacy starts to look less pristine. His tendency to throw costly interceptions and falter in crucial playoff games raises the argument that, while a regular season marvel, he's a bit overrated when it comes to all-time greatness. Let's start with the glaring issue. Interceptions. Favre holds the NFL record for career interceptions with an eye-popping 336 picks. While his gunslinger style made him exciting to watch, it also made him a liability in critical moments. This recklessness didn't just hurt his stats, it directly impacted his teams, particularly in the playoffs. For instance, in his 22 postseason games, Favre threw 30 interceptions. Some of these came at the worst possible moments, like the infamous overtime pick in the 2007 NFC Championship game against the New York Giants, costing the Packers a trip to the Super Bowl. Another notable example was his ill-advised crossbody throw in the 2009 NFC Championship game with the Minnesota Vikings, a decision that ended their season in heartbreaking fashion. Favre's postseason career, while respectable at 13-11, lacks the dominance you'd expect from a quarterback often mentioned among the best. Despite numerous opportunities, he only managed to win 1 Super Bowl, coming in the 1996 season. That title was impressive, but it stands alone in a career filled with playoff exits that fell short of expectations. Players like Tom Brady, Joe Montana, and even contemporaries like Peyton Manning found ways to consistently elevate their play in the postseason, while Favre often fell victim to his own mistakes. For a quarterback with so many opportunities and talented rosters, his inability to secure multiple championships is a glaring omission. Critics may argue that Favre's regular season success and longevity overshadow these flaws, but the truth is that great quarterbacks are defined by their ability to perform in the biggest moments. Favre's reckless style, which led to so many highlights, also led to just as many heartbreaks. When you consider his interception woes, playoff struggles, and tendency to collapse in critical situations, the case for Brett Favre as an all-time great feels more about his charm and narrative than his actual accomplishments. While undeniably great, he falls short of being the legend some make him out to be. Then there's also everything that's gone on after he retired, which in my opinion helped lift a little bit of nostalgia from my own analysis of the quarterback. No doubt he belongs in the Hall of Fame, but he should not be on any NFL Mount Rushmore when it comes to consistent winning performances when it matters the most, which in my opinion is the most important thing for a quarterback to excel at. Your regular season stats are great, but we all know championships are what really builds a permanent legacy in the game. Archie Manning is often seen as a football icon, remembered for his athleticism, grit, and the tough circumstances he faced during his career. Playing the majority of his years with the New Orleans Saints, a team that epitomized dysfunction in the 1970s and early 1980s, Manning is often hailed as a quarterback who did the best he could with what he had. However, when you dig deeper into his numbers and career trajectory, the case can be made that Manning is somewhat overrated. His struggles with interceptions, lack of playoff success, and inability to elevate his team to a competitive level cast a shadow over the narrative of him as a hard-luck hero. First, Manning's turnover issues are difficult to ignore. Over his 13 seasons in the NFL, Manning threw 173 interceptions compared to just 125 touchdowns, resulting in a career passer rating of 67.1, a figure far below what's considered elite, even for his era. His interception percentage of 4.8% was among the worst of his contemporaries, and while part of this can be attributed to playing for bad teams, it's clear that turnovers were a persistent flaw in his game. Manning's tendency to force throws into tight coverage or make ill-advised decisions under pressure consistently cost his team opportunities to win, especially in close games. Then there's the glaring lack of postseason success, or any postseason appearance at all. In his 13 years, Manning never led a team to the playoffs, an absence that stands out even among quarterbacks who played for struggling franchises. While the Saints were undeniably bad during Manning's tenure, great quarterbacks have shown they can elevate poor teams. Consider players like John Elway, who dragged mediocre rosters to Super Bowls, or more recently, Joe Burrow, who turned the downtrodden Cincinnati Bengals into AFC champions. Manning, despite his talent and reputation, never demonstrated that same ability to lift his team. Even when surrounded by better talent in later stints with the Oilers and Vikings, the results remained underwhelming. Much of Manning's legacy seems to come from the narrative surrounding his career rather than his actual accomplishments. Fans and analysts alike often give him a pass because of the Saints' dysfunction, but it's worth asking how much of that dysfunction he contributed to with his inability to limit turnovers or rally his team to even a single winning season. Other quarterbacks in difficult circumstances, like Fran Tarkenton or Ken Anderson, found ways to succeed or leave a lasting legacy of consistent performance, something Manning could not achieve. Ultimately, Archie Manning's reputation benefits heavily from his role as the patriarch of a football dynasty and the nostalgic admiration for his grit and toughness. While he was undoubtedly talented and faced difficult circumstances, his career numbers and lack of postseason success reveal a quarterback whose narrative may have outpaced his actual on-field impact. For all his physical gifts, Manning's inability to transcend his surroundings or achieve tangible success keeps him firmly in the category of good, but not great, quarterbacks. He had the talent to transform a franchise, but it never really materialized in the way it ended up for both of his sons. I think his legacy will continue to be huge in the game, especially if Arch Manning ends up on an NFL field, but his own career has been lifted by his son's notoriety quite a bit. Dan Fouts is often celebrated as one of the great quarterbacks of his era, thanks to his prolific passing numbers and his role as the leader of the high-powered Air Coryell offense with the San Diego Chargers. He was the prototype for the modern gunslinger, amassing gaudy yardage totals and redefining what it meant to lead a vertical offense in the NFL. However, when you look beyond the highlight reel and his impressive regular season statistics, there's a strong case that Dan Fouts is overrated. His career was marked by an inability to limit turnovers, a lack of postseason success, and a failure to elevate his team when it mattered most. Let's start with the numbers that put Fouts under scrutiny. Interceptions. Over his 15-year career, Fouts threw 242 interceptions against 254 touchdowns. That's nearly a 1-to-1 ratio, unacceptable for a quarterback often mentioned among the all-time greats. His career interception percentage of 4.3% stands out as one of the highest among Hall of Fame quarterbacks. While Fouts was undeniably prolific in piling up yardage, leading the league in passing yards 4 times, his inability to take care of the football often sabotaged his team's chances in critical games. For perspective, his career passer rating of 80.2 places him below contemporaries like Joe Montana and Ken Anderson, both of whom were more efficient and consistent passers. The postseason paints an even more damning picture of Fouts' career. Despite leading one of the most innovative offenses in NFL history, Fouts never reached the Super Bowl. His playoff record stands at just 3-4, and those losses often highlighted his flaws. In the infamous 1981 AFC Championship game, known as the Freezer Bowl, Fouts completed only 15 of 28 passes for 185 yards and 2 interceptions, failing to adapt to the conditions or lead his team past the Cincinnati Bengals. In total, Fouts threw 16 interceptions in 7 playoff games, an alarmingly high rate for someone expected to be a franchise cornerstone. His postseason struggles highlight his inability to elevate his performance when the stakes were highest, a key trait of truly great quarterbacks. Fouts also benefits from playing in a pass-heavy system that inflated his numbers during an era when most offenses were far more conservative. While he was ahead of his time in terms of raw yardage, much of his success came within the context of Don Coryell's revolutionary scheme, which emphasized deep throws and spread formations. This offensive system masked Fouts' shortcomings as it often forced him to pass excessively, racking up numbers but also increasing turnovers. Other quarterbacks in more balanced systems demonstrated the ability to win with fewer fewer resources or adapt their play to different situations, something Fouts rarely showed. In the end, Dan Fouts' legacy is built on the excitement of Air Coryell and his flashy regular season stats, but his penchant for interceptions, lack of postseason success, and failure to deliver a championship raised serious questions about his placement among the all-time greats. While Fouts was undoubtedly a pioneer for the modern passing game, his career accomplishments fall short of the lofty reputation that surrounds him. For all his talent, he remains a quarterback whose narrative might just outshine his actual achievements. He was more efficient than his counterparts in almost every measurable metric, yet he was unable to cross the finish line in the biggest games of the year. Dan Fouts is an undeniable Hall of Famer, missing the most important statistic to be in GOAT conversation. Drew Bledsoe often finds his name in discussions of great quarterbacks from the 1990s and early 2000s, largely due to his cannon arm, Pro Bowl appearances, and gaudy passing numbers during his prime. As the first overall pick in the 1993 NFL Draft, Bledsoe was hailed as the savior of the New England Patriots, and for a time, he seemed to fulfill that promise. However, when you take a closer look at his career, Bledsoe's legacy falls short of the elite status that some attach to him. His high interception totals, lack of postseason success, and inability to consistently elevate his teams reveal a quarterback who may be a bit overrated. First, let's address Bledsoe's turnovers. Over his career, Bledsoe threw 206 interceptions, with only 251 touchdowns, a mediocre ratio that highlights his struggles with decision-making. His career interception percentage of 3.6% is relatively high even for his era, and it underscores his tendency to force throws into coverage. While his strong arm allowed him to make spectacular plays, it also led to far too many costly mistakes. Bledsoe was the quintessential high-risk, high-reward quarterback, but more often than not, the risks outweigh the rewards, particularly in key moments. Then there's his postseason record, which is underwhelming for a player of his talent and stature. Bledsoe's career playoff record stands at 3-3, with his most significant playoff contributions coming as a backup to Tom Brady during the New England Patriots' 2001 Super Bowl run. While he played admirably in relief of Brady during the AFC Championship game that year, it's telling that his most notable playoff success came in a role where he wasn't even the primary starter. Throughout his career as a starter, Bledsoe struggled to lead his teams deep into the playoffs. His lone Super Bowl appearance in the 1996 season ended in a lopsided loss to the Green Bay Packers, in which he threw 4 interceptions, effectively costing his team any chance of victory. Bledsoe also had a reputation for being a stat padder. He benefited greatly from the offensive systems he played in, particularly under Bill Parcells in New England, where he was often tasked with throwing the ball at an extremely high volume. For example, in 1994, Bledsoe attempted a staggering 691 passes, leading the league, but also inflating his yardage totals. While he was capable of racking up big numbers, his efficiency lagged behind his contemporaries. His career completion percentage of 57% and passer rating of 77 are well below what you'd expect from a quarterback often praised for his arm talent. Players like Steve Young, Brett Favre, and even later era contemporaries like Peyton Manning far outshine Bledsoe in terms of efficiency and ability to lead their teams to consistent success. Finally, Bledsoe's career is defined as much by his replacement as by his accomplishments. When Bledsoe was injured in 2001, Tom Brady took over as the Patriots' starting quarterback and immediately transformed the franchise into a dynasty. The stark difference between Bledsoe's Patriots and Brady's success highlighted what Bledsoe lacked: the ability to elevate his team when it mattered most. In the end, Drew Bledsoe was a talented quarterback with a big arm and a knack for making big plays, but his career is marred by inefficiency, turnovers, and a lack of defining moments in the postseason. While he was a solid player and a key figure in the Patriots' history, his legacy as an elite quarterback is more a product of hype and nostalgia than sustained excellence. I do think his starting career was usurped by the undisputed greatest quarterback of all time, and if it wasn't for that, he would have become a much more forgotten figure by now. His bounce back from one of the most gruesome injuries of all time also helps his case in terms of pure ability. While the quarterbacks discussed earlier often receive significant acclaim, these honorable mentions, George Blanda, Steve McNair, and Len Dawson, are worth examining for their own overrated legacies. All three were talented and left undeniable marks on the game, but their careers are often held in slightly higher regard than their actual performance might merit. Let's break down each case before getting into the #1 quarterback on our list. George Blanda is often celebrated as one of the NFL's most versatile and durable players, thanks to his dual role as a quarterback and kicker, and a career that spanned an incredible 26 seasons. While his longevity is impressive, his legacy as a quarterback deserves scrutiny. Blanda threw a staggering 277 interceptions, still the second highest total in NFL history, and his career completion percentage of 47% is shockingly low, even for his era. Although he enjoyed brief success with the Houston Oilers in the AFL, leading them to 2 championships, his career passer rating of 60 reflects just how inefficient he was as a passer. Much of his legacy rests on his longevity and contributions as a kicker, rather than consistent quarterback excellence. In his prime, he was great, but a lot of his most memorable attributes come more from the longevity of his career. Steve McNair was known for his toughness and ability to play through injuries, earning him the nickname Air McNair and a co-MVP award in 2003. However, McNair's career stats and postseason performances reveal a quarterback who, while very good, often fell short of greatness. His career passer rating of 82 and touchdown to interception ratio of 174 to 119 are solid but unspectacular. McNair also struggled in big games, with a 5-5 postseason record and a heartbreaking loss in Super Bowl 34, where his Titans fell just 1 yard short of tying the game. While he was a respected leader, McNair's reputation is bolstered more by his resilience and likability than by elite game-changing performances. In his prime, he was absolutely great, and if he had been on a team with a stronger supporting cast, who knows what would have been possible. Len Dawson is remembered as the cool and efficient leader of the Kansas City Chiefs offense during the 1960s, culminating in a victory in Super Bowl IV. While Dawson was undoubtedly a key figure in the AFL's history, his overall career numbers and impact are often overstated. He benefited significantly from playing in Hank Stram's innovative offense, which helped mask some of his limitations. Dawson threw 181 interceptions in his career compared to 239 touchdowns, and his postseason record was a modest 5-3, with most of his success confined to the AFL era before the league merged with the NFL. His Super Bowl IV win was impressive, but his relatively limited success outside of that iconic moment highlights his status as a product of a great system more than as a transcendent quarterback. Since the AFL was where he had a majority of his success, it will always have an asterisk next to it due to its different status for most of its existence. Joe Namath is one of the most iconic figures in NFL history, remembered for his charismatic personality, flashy style, and groundbreaking guarantee to win Super Bowl III, which he and the New York Jets delivered. Namath's cultural impact on the game is undeniable. He was a trailblazer who brought swagger and star power to professional football. But when we separate Namath the personality from Namath the player, his on-field performance raises questions about whether his legacy is built more on moments and myth than sustained excellence. The most glaring issue in Namath's career is his tendency to turn the ball over. Namath threw 220 interceptions in his career, compared to just 173 touchdowns, giving him a touchdown to interception ratio that's well below par for even his era. His career completion percentage of 50% reflects a quarterback who was, at best, erratic in his accuracy. While Namath played in an era when passing offenses weren't as efficient as today, his propensity for interceptions was excessive even for his time. By comparison, contemporaries like Fran Tarkenton and Bart Starr demonstrated far more consistency and ball security while leading their teams to greater success. Namath's legacy largely rests on his performance in Super Bowl III, where he famously guaranteed victory against the heavily favored Baltimore Colts and delivered with a 16-7 win. While Namath played a smart, mistake-free game, his numbers in that contest, 17 completions on 28 attempts for 206 yards and no touchdowns, were pedestrian. The Jets' defense and running game played just as critical a role in the victory as Namath did. Beyond that iconic moment, Namath's postseason resume is non-existent. He never made it back to the Super Bowl and finished his career with a 2-1 playoff record. Namath's regular season career also leaves much to be desired. While he was the first quarterback in NFL history to throw for over 4,000 yards in a season in 1967, that milestone came with 28 interceptions and a completion percentage of just 52%. Injuries further hampered his career, particularly in the later years, as he played only one full season after 1969. His career passer rating of 65 and record of 62 and 63 with 4 ties as a starter highlight a player who was often more style than substance. Despite his reputation as a dynamic playmaker, Namath was inconsistent, inefficient, and too often a liability for his team. Namath's cultural significance can't be overstated. He helped bring attention and legitimacy to the AFL, merged football with pop culture, and paved the way for the modern superstar athlete. However, his actual performance as a quarterback doesn't match the hype. When compared to other Hall of Famers, Namath's statistics and overall career accomplishments fall short. His Super Bowl guarantee and charisma have kept him in the conversation as one of the greats, but the numbers tell a different story. Joe Cool is undeniably one of the coolest characters in football history, but his actual performance was a lot less cool than his persona would have had you believe. Joe Namath was undoubtedly a trailblazer and an important figure in football history, but as a quarterback, his career was marked by inconsistency, turnovers, and a lack of sustained success. While his Super Bowl III win will always be legendary, it's hard to argue that Namath's on-field play merits the lofty status he often enjoys in discussions of NFL legends. In the end, Broadway Joe remains a cultural icon, but as a quarterback, his legacy is more flash than substance. Even with that being said, he is the last competent quarterback the Jets have had, and I am pretty sure there is an actual curse on the franchise due to their Super Bowl victory. No franchise should be able to have that much bad luck. Those are the top 5 most overrated quarterbacks, in my opinion. I understand not everyone will agree, but I feel like these 5 are some of the most overrated I've seen. I'm not saying they don't deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. Some of them are some of the most iconic quarterbacks in history, yet I do feel like when I see their name tossed around in GOAT conversations, it does make me question if people really know the stats behind these people. If you enjoyed this video, I would appreciate you pressing the like button and leaving a comment down below. We are trying to hit 10,000 subscribers this year and would love your help. Thank you for watching. We really appreciate your guys' support.